No matter what you say.
Not anymore. All right, let's see. I'm going to go check the live to see if we're live, because we're supposed to be live. The question is, are we live?
There we are.
Oh, look.
Yes,
we're
sir.
live. We're not Memorex.
Wait, what does that mean? Live?
We're alive. We're alive in Christ. We're reborn.
I don't know. I mean, I think we're probably at least several milliseconds delayed, actually.
Yeah, we are. We're tape delayed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is. All right. Hey, everybody. If you're just joining us, we are just going live. Yes, we have a third on here today. Or a 2.5. He's kind of young.
Wait, who?
Yeah.
Who else is on here?
I don't think I count as a full person yet.
we have a guy who's been lurking for the last couple of months, and then just decided to weasel his way in.
Voila.
Right. Hey, hello, Justin. Justin, man, dude, as soon as we go live, he's there. Love that. Love that.
What's up, Justin?
Looks like Larry, Curly, and
Justin.
Mo. Actually, I'm named Curly, but Curtis looks like him.
Curly was always the best. Let's be honest. There's no getting around it.
No,
it's just true. Curly
like
is
Larry.
the best.
Yep.
No, not Larry. Come on.
Yeah. Come here,
Curly
Porcupine.
is the best stooge. Come on. There's no... I mean, what are you going to pick?
Curly
Shep
is
next?
best?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
Curly's
Shemp.
definitely the best.
Shemp was great from a very neurotic standpoint.
You know, I think Shrimp.
I love
was
Shrimp.
Part of a very unfortunate. He was just part of an unfortunate stage. It wasn't really his fault
No.
that he wasn't as funny as Curly, because nobody's as funny as Curly. Because
Nope.
Curly is
Curly
the
was the
best
best.
stooge. There's no
Yes.
question about it. So, yeah.
I really liked Mo, though.
Yeah, Mo. Mo was funny in real life.
So
Mo
angry
was
all the time.
in real life. Mo was like he was the protector. He was the one that watched out for everybody. He was the one that tried to make sure that they were all being taken care of by the studio and stuff. He's really cool. Deep love for his brothers and his friend.
Good old Mo.
I saw an interview with him on the Mike Douglas show back in like the late 60s, early 70s, something like that. I mean, I want to say it was like 72 or something. And it was cool. Ted Knight, you remember Ted Knight, Curtis, from Mary
No.
Tyler Moore Show? Played the weatherman. Today,
I
on
mean,
the
I-
news.
I didn't watch much of the Mary Tyler Moore show.
Oh my gosh,
I thought it was for chicks.
Oh, no,
because I
that
wasn't
was-
enlightened then.
that was a hilarious show. He
I was actually. It was just. I don't know. I was a little young for it, and my parents didn't really watch it. So
he
Yeah.
on the
I didn't
Mike
even know what that
Douglas
show
show
was till about a year ago.
on the Mike Douglas show, Mo and Mike and Ted Knight did a pie fight. They had a mannequin up there, and Mo was showing them the different ways to throw a pie. You know, the nuances of getting a pie in the face and stuff.
how much time do they spend practicing throwing pies?
Oh,
You have to wonder.
those
One
guys
less.
really dialed that in. Oh, I love the food fights and stuff that they had on the in the old shows. All right, let's see here. Someone has some background noise.
Well, I know who it's not.
Let's see. It actually it could be Curtis's phone or something. Are you monitoring the stream on your phone? I did hear something coming through at one point.
My phone's in here, but no, I'm not. I'm not engaged with it right now. Are they hearing background noise right this minute?
Tommy says for us to start over because he just got here. Okay.
So, Welcome. We're just getting started again. It went away.
Yes, there is music.
Okay.
Yes, you do hear music.
Well, I was messing around with my microphone, so maybe it was just me messing around with my mic, trying to make it behave.
Yeah.
It was casting a really funny shadow on me. I don't know. Like I said, this chair problem I'm going to have to resolve because I feel like I'm sitting down like a little kid.
You're a little kid at the grown-up table for the first time.
Yeah, that's kind of what it feels like. I got to admit.
Let's see. Justin just said that Nick Nimmin is live too. Well, Nick, that's it. He's got to coordinate with me. He's taking all of our juice. Darn it. That guy.
Who watches that guy?
Yeah. No, he's my Saturday morning. I'll put Nick on when I wake up. He and his brother D, they're over in Thailand, and let me see. I'm trying to think about the time. I think it is Saturday night for them when they're doing it, or it's Friday night. I can't remember if they're ahead or if they're behind. Wow. But it is
so confusing.
It is nighttime for them, so they're doing it like at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, which would be like 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock here in the morning on Saturday, and they go for about 3 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and
they're more committed than I.
So right now,
I don't
if
have
he's
3
live,
hours.
it's nighttime, bedtime for them over there. But
hey, Tom,
you got to be with your audience, right?
Yep.
So.
Tom, I love the comment. I'm no longer live streaming my church services. Our new pastor's daughter has taken over, and I'm so happy. I'm now considered a consultant. That is a benefit when you have the younger people helping, because because I'm technically still considered a young person. When I have people who are like in the youth who say they want to learn audio and stuff, it's super helpful to just be able to have somebody else do it. It can be a lot. So.
Yep.
All right, guys. So we are going to be talking today about audio nightmares, fixing problems as they're happening, or
should have gotten a knife from the kitchen.
Yeah,
we could start with you know.
The shower scene of
his shower curtain and a knife.
Yes. we could actually mock that up with our worship pastor, Jason. He's usually singing when he's not around us, so we could have him singing opera in the shower and then
in the shower, yeah.
Pull the shower curtain back and let's see. So it's 10. Yeah, so it's 10 after 10 in Thailand right now. Okay, so but is it Thursday over there or is it Friday? Because I know there's a Dateline issue. So let's see. Audio nightmares is an old person saying it's too loud.
Oh my gosh,
that's the truth.
Yeah,
that's the truth. Oh man.
No offense, Tommy. All right, so let me see. Hey,
morning,
Ron is here. Ron Shepard. Ron teaches over at Janus School. Hey, man, glad you're here.
What's up? Welcome to the show.
Yes, he is.
Jana's awesome.
He is. She calls him Coach.
Yes.
And she's
Coach.
He's one of her buddies. She helps him out during his PE class and stuff with like the little kids. And she comes home and she's like, "Oh, they were nightmares." See, it's Thursday night. Okay, cool. So they're basically 12 hours on us. All right, so let me do the intro and we'll jump in here. Let's see. So I'm going to go from the intro to the two shot, and then we'll bring up our interloper. You guys ready?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
All right. And Justin's reminding me to turn the music down. Thanks, brother. Look at that. Teamwork makes the dream work. We had to go all the way to the UK to get somebody to help coach us through the little nuances in our show, but it's worth it. All right.
You got a headphone hanging down the right side.
Yeah, it's got a weird. It's got a like a double thing to hold it in, and it makes my ear itch when I have it in. It's like I need to get just like the single. It's got 2 hoops. It holds it in good, but bothers me.
We're in the show, and Dave's gonna be like,
"Yeah,
Tom, this is not my show." Or is it your show? Is that what you're claiming here?
All right, here we go.
Let's go.
Don't you hate it when you've got everything set up perfect, you've tested, you've rehearsed, you've got everything just really dialed in, and everything is awesome. And then you go live and things start breaking. Something doesn't work. That's what we're going to be talking about today on the Church Media Creators Show. If we've not met, my name is Dave Curley, and I am a church media creator just like you. With me, as always, is the lovely, the talented, the bearded, the sitting low in the seat today, Curtis James.
Yeah. The chair is not working right today, so hopefully there'll be a new chair by next week. But yeah, here I am. Glad to see you guys today. Glad to talk about the things that happen after we start, the things that lurk in the corners, the things that are waiting right behind the soundboard to leap out at us once we start. That's what always happens, right?
Yes,
always.
Every time it is there's something that goes wrong, and then panic ensues. Papers are flying around the booth and stuff, and it's just chaos and pandemonium. And how do we fix that? Well, we're going to be talking about that today. But we have a guest, believe it or not. We have I'm trying to think.
We do?
Yeah, I think he's actually our first guest since we relaunched this show. I mean, like, did we talk about that? Yeah.
No. I don't know. Or did he just like jump into our stream and you're just adding him?
No, he just showed up on my doorstep once, and we just have to let him in. Actually, I want to introduce to you guys to Cord Reeves. Cord is a friend of both Curtis and I. He is a young YouTuber. He has started a YouTube channel called Cord Reeves. And Cord, why don't you tell people about what your channel is and what it is that you focus on there?
Absolutely. Well, first off, thank you guys for having me. And no, I did not just show up on Dave's doorstep, as much as he'd like you to think that.
In a basket wrapped up with a little note pinned to him.
Yes, special. But I'm kind of surprised I didn't get as nice of an intro as Curtis, but I digress. My channel is, just look it up on YouTube, Cord Reeves. It's just my name, and mostly I cover the journey of about October. Our worship leader here at our church put me on training for the live stream audio mix. My dad was an audio engineer for years at a mega church, and for a long time I'd always considered, learning the ropes of how to do it live. And I kind of trained on how to do that, but eventually over time I decided, there's so many volunteers out there, and I've noticed I have so many friends and family who are volunteers, their live stream, and there's not a lot of knowledge about the basic subjects. And when you train for a couple of weeks, maybe 2 hours at a time, to learn how to just run sliders and change basic things, there's a lot more that can go into a live stream. So, and as an audio engineer who's a volunteer, I think I see the need for volunteers who are audio engineers to be able to develop their skills while not necessarily becoming paid audio engineers. So it benefits the church in the long run, because you have volunteers who are willing to put in the time and the work to mix your audio for your stream, and at the same time, still be able to grow and, just develop that skill. And my channel is all about helping guide you guys. If you guys are volunteers and watching this stream, then you definitely need to head over there. Helping you guys learn the basics for one, and two, learn to develop and pivot with the changes and the standards that are out there for worship music. so we're not just becoming satisfied and becoming complacent with what we already have. So that's really what my channel's about. Probably too long of an intro.
Awesome. No, that was fine. No, that was absolutely fine. That was good. And one of the things that I like about what you're doing is that you're taking people along on the journey. I think that's really cool. And you and I talked about that. How do you start a YouTube channel and grow a YouTube channel with something that you're passionate about when you're not an expert yet? And I think that idea of bringing people along on the journey, because there are so many that are just like you that just got put in fact, in our chat, Tom is the original viewer of this stuff that I do here. He was there at the very beginning years ago when I first launched on a totally different platform. And he and I've been walking through all of this together as we go. And he just mentioned in the chat that he is now not doing the live stream directly at his church because one of the younger people has stepped up and he's taught him how to do it. And now they're doing it. And so, there's, if you're bringing a volunteer base in, if you have people that, every year, someone new comes up and says, hey, I'd like to learn how to do this, or they show an interest and you bring them, back into the control booth and start showing them how to do things. You've got people that are coming in new. You've got seasoned professionals. In some cases, like at our church, we actually, one of the guys that works in our booth, this is his career, live audio mixing, doing installs, doing all sorts of stuff like that. And he's done stuff in churches. He's done major concerts. He's done, you name it, he's had his fingers in it. And so he is a, guy who feeds himself doing this sort of stuff. And then we have you who, is fresh out of high school and is like, hey, I want to learn how to do live mixing. So from one extreme to the other. So you taking people along on your journey, I think is great, because those people that are new like you guys can all grow together. And as you move from, what was it I said earlier this week? This is a football. The basics of
yes
of this is a mixing console. To solving all these problems that these people are seeing. I think it's going to be a cool journey, and it's neat to watch, and it's neat for Curtis and I both to be able to be a part of it with you. And we're glad you're here.
Thank you, guys. It's awesome. It's
a blast. as we look at this and we kind of navigate through, we always have to remember that what we're doing is not production. What we're doing is ministry, and ministry is always about bringing that next level person in. It's always about replacing ourselves. I mean, like, if you look at what Jesus did, he came in with the intention of not being here. He came in and he developed these guys to do his work. As a matter of fact, I was just studying in John chapter 4 because I'm preaching in that passage, and it starts out by saying, that the Pharisees heard Jesus was baptizing more people than John the Baptist. So he was getting all this attention. But then, like, John actually clarifies, he's like, well, actually, Jesus didn't baptize. It was the disciples who was baptizing these people, because Jesus had taught them all of these things. Jesus was bringing them up. You can rewind all the way back to David, and you can look at David who kills Goliath. But if you keep reading David's story, you'll find out that David wasn't just a giant killer. He raised up giant killers. Others of his soldiers actually killed other giants in their battles in the future. And so our job, as soon as we come to understand something, it's our duty to then raise somebody else up to do that, to raise giant killers, and realize that it's our calling. The Bible says, you have freely received, therefore freely give. And we always want to say, well, that's the context of, of salvation in the gospel. It's true. I mean, you freely receive the gospel. You should be freely giving it away, no question. But it's more than just that. It's like God's economic plan. And it says, here we are, we've got this thing that I've learned, this gift I've been given, this opportunity that I have. And I have this, and it's not my job ever to just hold on to it, because God doesn't give it to us for us. He gives it to us for somebody else, always. Everything we get is about somebody else, and we have to view it that way. So everything we learn about video, audio, about services, about worship leading, about any of that in this situation is clearly something we're supposed to be giving away intentionally, not just hoarding for ourselves. And so we've got to make sure we're always developing that next generation. And like in our church, we start training kids on soundboard and pro presenter and that kind of stuff in third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade through our worship academy. And then they get to really dive in and do it in their junior high and high school years. And then as they're doing that, our worship ministry integrates them in our sanctuary. And it's not unusual for us to have a youth serving in our main sound booth, just like it's not unusual for us to have a youth serving on our stage. So all of those things add together to say, you know, what are you, not just what do you know, but how are you raising up the next group? How are you generating the next person who's going to do this, and who's going to generate the next person who's going to do it, and who's going to generate the next person who's going to do it, and therefore, and so forth and so on.
And I think when we talk about generate, that word generate and generation go together. So if you have audio engineers like Tom, for example, in the chat, who's 73, but he's passing it down to a person who's a pastor's daughter, you're talking about generational, the passing of generations. And there throughout scriptures, you see this. God's always calling us to pass things down to the next generation. And I think in my life, even people who are in their 20s and are married are passing down things to me that on our tips on how to do this and how to do this effectively, where we're not becoming a distraction, for one, and two, where we're becoming invisible, as Curtis has talked about before, where we are doing this job or this position, we're serving in this way in order to, yes, produce a worship experience for people, but to do it so that we know enough about what we're doing that we can pass it on to somebody else who's 10, 15 years, sometimes even 30 years younger than us eventually.
Yeah. And speaking of, you know, the generational thing, you know, as both of y'all were talking, it reminded me back when this was like 2009, 10, something like that. We put together, back when I was working with Geek Beat, and we were doing Geek Beat Live and all that sort of stuff. We had put on a conference that was a digital media conference. So in there, we were doing everything. We were teaching video. We were teaching graphics and stuff, multimedia stuff. We were teaching social media. We were teaching all that sort of stuff. It was a big conference. We had 600 or 700 people come to it. It was awesome. And it was like a 3-day thing. And I was using a TriCaster. So we set up a TriCaster, and that's what, that's what we were doing the main sessions in the main room with. And Jillian, my daughter, was 4, I think. And she and my wife and Jana had come up and were hanging out during the evenings while we were doing stuff. And I remember it was like in between sessions, Jillian was standing over there at the TriCaster with me, and my friend Philip, who was a VP of I don't know, a million things over at NewTek, the people that make the TriCasters, he was there, and he and I were talking, and he said, "You want to see if she can run it?" And I said, "Sure." So she hopped up into the chair, and I stepped back, and Philip taught her in a couple of minutes how to live switch on a TriCaster, which was the coolest thing. Now, you know, it's very basic when you're dealing with a 4-year-old. So he said, okay, you push this button. He showed her where the preview was. And then he said, and then this one is the cut button. And so he had earphones on her, and she was listening. And then he would point to one of the preview buttons, and she would push it. And then he would go like this, and she would make the switch. And so for about 5 minutes, she was live switching in a conference, you know, of 600 people, and she was 4 years old. That is extremely cool. That is the pictures of that is one of my favorite things out of her childhood, is seeing her do that, doing a big person's job and doing it well.
It's also an important thing for us to realize, lest we think ourselves a little too important, that anybody can learn what we're doing.
Right.
And we can think really highly of ourselves if we want to, and all that does is hurt the process. Like, all that does is damage the process, because
And the church.
truly, if you run slides on your computer, we're literally clicking on the next thing, right? I can have taught, elementary school age kids do it. Now, do I want to just drop it in the lap of a third grader? Not really, because are they going to be able to go back and find the chorus and skip forward? Are they going to have the attention span and all that? No, but we don't need to think too highly of ourselves either when it comes down to it, and think, well, we know so much that how could we ever possibly teach, a young person that? Well, that's the job. The job
Right.
is to teach the young person that. We've got to make sure we're willing to do it, and we're going to engage ourselves in that way and apply ourselves.
Exactly.
Not think too highly of ourselves to think that someone, some 14-year-old couldn't do our job. I don't know if you've noticed, but most 14-year-olds are pretty technically savvy on a lot of things, and might be able to teach each of us a few things about some of the devices they use. So always being willing to learn, and then always being willing to teach, are both really important.
Exactly. So let's talk about when something does go wrong in the booth. A third grader may not know how to handle it, and most adults don't know how to handle it either. So I think one of the things that we I don't know, I'd say every couple of weeks something goes amiss in either our worship service, in the middle of the sermon. It could be, it could be something that is affecting the audience in the room. It could be something that's affecting the live stream. Um, Curtis, when something goes wrong, what's the best way to handle that?
Well, something is such a big statement,
I know.
and there's so many things that can go wrong. Like, it can be things that affect your room. It can be things on the stream that your room doesn't know about. So everything is different, but there is always the right very first response. And the right very first response is, don't panic, okay?
Exactly.
Don't panic and just do something, okay? Just stop for a second. Even if it takes a second, 1 second, maybe all you have, but stop and think about what you're about to do, because what you don't want to do is make things worse. You want to make things better or have no impact on the situation, but you
Right.
don't want to make things worse. So as soon as something goes wrong, take a beat and don't panic. Realize that there is some kind of solution out there. It may not be a great solution, but you're going to be able to find it, and you'll be able to do something about it. But don't just act, because a lot of times we really just make things worse. So when things go wrong and the nightmare begins, you realize there's something wrong here. Stop and take a second. Don't just do something, because when we just do something, it reminds me of a situation where there was a guy who was on staff with me, and he was scrolling through some things on the internet, and he had clicked on something, and something popped up that was not okay for him to have on his computer, and he did not intend that. And I heard him start screaming, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh." And I walked into his office. I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "I clicked on this link. I didn't know what it was." And da 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 da. And I said, "Oh, okay, what'd you do?" And he said, "I unplugged my computer." He just reached down and unplugged his computer, because he was like total panic. And I'm like, okay, well, let's make sure that we don't let this happen again. Like, we pay attention to these things. But when it comes down to it, panic is not the answer. We want to have a balanced response in a room that's going to be impacting 50, 100, 200, 500 people online, whatever. We got to really consider, how does our response balance with what's going on in the room and for our viewers? And that's got to be our first response.
Right. And doing the not panicking gives you the few seconds you need, and usually it's only going to be a few seconds, to triage what's going on, to look and say, okay, is this, what is happening? Is it something equipment wise that is happening? Is it something that's happening up on the stage? Is it something that's happening back here? Trying to identify what it is. And then, is it something that I can fix back here? Is it something I can fix later? When's the best time to fix it? There's kind of there's several different scenarios that can happen in any given live performance or live service. How have you, Cord and I can share a story here in a sec that happened to us a couple of weeks ago. But Curtis, when you see something like this, or when you're running a board, when you're doing something like that, what's the best methodology that you can think of that to determine, what's the impact? When can I fix it? How can I fix it? Is it fixable, etc.?
Yeah, I think that, the first thing, obviously, you stop for a second and you just ponder, okay, what's happening? Whether it's a popping sound, if it's feedback, if it's, all of a sudden your camera's, everything is out of whack, your picture's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to stop and you want to consider the source that you're dealing with. You need to think about the piece of equipment that you're interacting with at that moment that could be causing this. So, like, for instance, I couldn't tell you a million times over have I heard, oh, you hear that feedback? It's coming from the keyboard. It's coming from the keyboard, because when the keyboardist hits these low notes, then feedback happens. Well, let me tell you something. A keyboard almost cannot in any possible way create feedback in its channel, because it's digital. It's not listening to something else. There is no feedback opportunity unless you have literally plugged out of the output and back into the input through the board on that channel for that keyboard, and you started feeding sound back into the keyboard from your soundboard. You're not getting feedback from your keyboard channel. Now, what's happening is I'm getting feedback on a microphone somewhere in the room that's resonating in those frequencies that it's hearing from the keyboard. And those frequencies are going through my microphone, through the soundboard,
Mm-hmm.
out the speakers, and back into the microphone. But it's not the keyboard. It can't be the keyboard. It's physically impossible for it to be the keyboard channel. The keyboard channel is not feeding back. You need to know your equipment. You need to be able to look at it and say, okay, that acoustic guitarist up there, I feel like I'm getting feedback when he's plugging away at this. Okay, you might be getting feedback from your acoustic guitarist. It is kind of rare. You got to have a lot of volume going on, because that pickup's way up inside or in the bridge of that guitar. So just understanding. Yet you may say, I could be picking up feedback on a Cajon mic. Oh yeah, Cajon mics are known for it, because you're banging on something that there's a lot of sound that can be coming off of another instrument, another monitor, hitting the side of that box and resonating inside of it. Choir mics, that's where it is. Pulpit mics, any kind of area mic. So you got to know what you're dealing with to understand how to troubleshoot it. You've got to know what the characteristics of the equipment you're dealing with are and what could be causing that problem. And if that's what you have to be able to do. You've got to be able to say, what's my source? You got to be able to stop and think about not a bigger problem, but the smaller problem. What's causing my problem is the key, because otherwise you'll chase down a million things that you don't have time to chase down. Whereas a little bit of thought will give you time to isolate a source as the problem, then go out from there, such as, hey, when the keyboardist is hitting these low notes, I'm getting feedback. Okay, well, I know it's not the keyboard, because I can't be feeding back in the keyboard channel, and so it's got to be a live mic somewhere on my stage. My most likely culprit is a area mic, like a choir mic or a pulpit mic or something like that. Next, I'm going to be looking at handheld mics.
Mm-hmm.
What are those things? What's the source that's causing the problem? Because it's not the keyboard. It's not the bass guitar. Because if you're getting feedback on your bass guitar, that dude is cranking. Let me tell you, like, it's deafening loud right where he's standing. And so you're going to need to know the limitations of your equipment, and so you can isolate the source. And that's the key when you're dealing with a live situation like that.
And a lot of times it is you when you say know your equipment, this knowledge comes from experience. So you're going to know what to look for after you have fixed this the first time. And that becomes one of the things that you look at the next time something like this happens. And it's just, the more you solve, the more problems that you solve, the smarter you get. It's the way I look at it. When you, and I see this all the time when I'm doing video, when I'm shooting a video, when I've set something, and then I get into the edit, and then I look and go, oh my gosh, I did not do this on my camera. I did not make this adjustment. I did not compensate for this or that. I had bad microphone placement on their shirt, something like that. Now I have to solve this problem after the fact, and that cements in my head something to look at the next time before I hit record. So don't panic that you don't know the solution right now, because by the end of the service you will have figured out what the solution is. Now, one of the things that when we were going over our notes for this, we talked about was that these problems can be happening in different ways. I mean, it can be a problem that's affecting the people in the room. It can be a problem that's affecting only the live stream audio. It's a problem that can be happening in the booth or on the stage. And how to, and you talked about that, about how to figure out where the problem is coming from. Now, if we've identified what the problem is, there's kind of a fine line, I think, between, is it something I can fix right now? Is it something I can fix in 2 minutes? Is it something that I can kind of leave because it's an annoyance, but it's not a major problem, right? We had that a couple of weeks ago. Cord, you and your family, your brothers and your mother, were leading worship. Our worship pastor is out of town. Curtis was on a mission trip. And so you guys were actually leading worship, and we had a problem. We had a problem with your brother Sawyer's. It was his guitar, the pack for his guitar, I think, the transmitter for his guitar.
So he was on stage, and we had everything set up. There had been no issues during rehearsal, which is typically how it goes. You don't have an issue during rehearsal.
Everything's perfect. All the batteries are perfect.
Yes. And you get to, so we got on stage and we started singing, and he was playing guitar, and everybody kind of realized his guitar was off. And through the talkback, front of house guy, John, noticed his guitar was not coming through. So we kept going and kept pushing through. Everybody kind of on stage, including me, my mom, my other brother, realized that Sawyer's guitar was out, but he also realized, and he just kept playing. Bryson was able to pick up from that. So there's adaptations that people can make for the moment of, so you don't go, hold on everybody, we just started the service, let's just stop and make sure Sawyer gets his battery fixed.
Mm-hmm.
That would be worse of a problem than his guitar not working for a season. Now, we are able to find solutions throughout the event, so we kind of solidified, okay, during the greeting time, there was communication between the front of house guy and another volunteer who helps in the audio to bring new batteries and put it in the pack so it would work. And there's workable solutions you can find during the service that may not necessarily be immediately when you need them fixed, but they are less distracting than a total revamp of the service or everybody shut off, let's start over, which that would be the worst possible scenario.
Right.
And especially since
No, go ahead.
Especially since it was just an acoustic set, there was no way for anybody to say, okay, he can just change his batteries real quick while the rest of the band keeps playing. It was really a very acoustic driven song. So there was a solution that needed to happen, one, but two, it wasn't pressing enough that we would have to entirely stop the thing. And I don't think there's ever a solution entirely that would force you to have to stop a worship service for a technical issue.
Right. It would have to be something like really drastic, in which case everybody is experiencing it all at the same time. Like half the electricity goes out or something like that.
Yes.
I actually experienced something like that several times leading worship over the years, but I can remember standing in front of a room of, hundreds of people on a Sunday morning. I'm up there with my acoustic, I'm playing, the whole band is going, and we lost power in the room. Like we lost power. Everything turned off. And so, but I had an acoustic piano, I had my acoustic guitar, I had acoustic drums, and I just kept going. I'm loud, and so I just started projecting, and I just kept going, and we kept singing, and then like 20 seconds later, boom, power comes back on, and it was pre-digital boards, so everything just pops back on. You don't have to reboot anything, and we just stayed in stride and kept going. But in today's world, when you look at clicks and tracks and those different kinds of things, well, and trying to reboot your soundboard and all that, you face different challenges when trying to overcome that. So, a catastrophic failure you should never ignore because everybody in the room knows it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you do have to push forward through catastrophic failure. At some point, it's going to happen. You're going to have catastrophic failure. And then you really, in the booth, you have no options. Then it's all about what's happening on your stage and anything you can do to empower that. I remember one night I was leading worship in a small setting and we lost power. It was a big storm coming through and we lost power, and it was like an acoustic set, so it wasn't a really big deal. We had a djembe player and me and I think a keyboardist, so we lost him. And it was a small room, so we were playing loud, but it got really dark really fast. There's not many windows, like any windows in the room. So people pulled their phones out and turned their flashlights on and shined them up toward the stage so they could see. They just did that. And so, you do have to let those things happen when something catastrophic takes place, and you can't just, be like, I've got to fix it. I've got to fix it. I've got to fix it. Sometimes you can't fix it. And that's an important aspect of these nightmarish issues is sometimes you can't fix it, and you got to be okay with that. But it doesn't mean we don't think about it and try to come up with answers as best we can.
So
I think it's important. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
It was just a quick note. And I think one of the important things to notice is not every audio issue that causes distraction as a audio engineer is a catastrophic issue.
That's right.
And I think taking that step back at the beginning and saying, okay, what is really the issue, identifying the sources Curtis talked about, will help us determine, is it really a catastrophic issue that requires us to everybody stop for a second, let the lights come back on, and then keep going. If it's that major, and as Curtis has said, even the power going out does not necessarily dictate it becoming a catastrophic issue, whereas everything would have to stop. So to your point, Curtis.
Yeah. One of the things that we need to realize, we want everything to be perfect. We want everything to work well, work smooth. And part of our job is to make sure that everybody can see and hear what's going on, but not see and hear us, so to speak. We're the monkeys behind the boards that, are just making everything happen. And so we don't want to, be flailing our arms or yelling or doing anything like that. We also need to realize that in most cases we've got this duality that's happening. We have two audiences, right? So we have the audience that's in the room and we have the audience that's online. And sometimes these problems will only be affecting the people that are in the room and not the people that are online. Like if a speaker goes out or if an amplifier goes out, okay, that's okay as far as the live stream goes, because we're not using the amplifiers, we're not using the speakers, we're using the equipment is going straight into a sound card, and that's or a mixer that's attached to our broadcast unit. So we don't need to worry about that. We can keep on doing our thing. So Cord, in his case, works in the control room with me, so he can keep doing the mix. He doesn't necessarily need to be involved in trying to fix the other problem unless he knows what the problem is and goes, hey, they just lost sound. Hold on a sec. I'm going to go out there and show them how to fix it. Which is another point on this, is that if you have the luxury of having a good volunteer base for what you're doing, for your church service, for your media team, and if you have people that are cross-trained, you may find out that over time, certain people develop an affinity for one area more so than another area, and they end up being kind of the lead for whatever that thing is. We have, and this does not in any way. I'm not trying to in any way put anyone in a class system or anything, but we have people that we think of as A team and B team and C team. That is not a you're greater than or you're less than type of a thing,
right?
But it is. We know that if we're doing something that is of a higher significance for one reason or another, you want your most experienced person to be at their station if you can. So we have we do concerts every now and then. So if we're doing a concert, we may want the guy who has more experience doing live concert mixing to be there. And if he can be there, if his schedule works out, he's the one that deals with multiple guitars on a regular basis, a bass. He knows how to mix drums. He knows how to mix vocals. He knows how to do cool things with vocals that make it sound even better than it does on a Sunday morning. So we want him to take the lead on that. If there's something that's happening video-wise, they want me to be either, depending on what the situation is, either engineering the stream, or maybe aside from capturing the stream, we want Dave with another camera running around and getting B-roll and capturing much more intimate shots of and photography of what's going on because of this event, right? So when you have those kind of people on your team, and if those people are not in the booth when this situation happens, when you start having a catastrophe, reach out to them. And in some cases, they may be, in our case, we have some people that sit up in the balcony with us. So our media booth is in the balcony. It's in the center of the balcony, and we have seating on either side. So what we end up having is 2 or 3 of the people who work there are sitting 10 feet away. So we can always grab somebody and say, can you run down and change these batteries, during the meet and greet time? Or can you go take, the pastor's microphone, his boom mic has gone out, his lapel mic has gone out. Can you go down and hand him a thing? And in some cases, you may see that person say, I'm going to go hand him the microphone, and they start doing it. But if you've got these experienced people, lean on them when that happens, especially if you're unable to triage it within the first minute or two of what's going on.
Yeah. And that's where we come to that concept that communication is key.
Yes.
You got to have communication. And communication starts with humility a lot of the time, and being able to say, hey, okay, everybody, I'm open to what you think. We've cross-trained people. You've worked this board. I've worked this board. You've worked this stream. You've worked this camera. I've worked it. I may know more about it than you do, but there's possibility that there's one thing that's going on here that you understand better than I do. And so I want you to communicate with me. And I want you to be able to say, hey, could it be this or could it be that? And sure, maybe that's something you already thought of, but don't be like, no, I already thought of that because I know everything. That's not helping anybody. Communicate. And so make sure you have lines of communication. The issue that Cord mentioned with the guitars, I know that they used in the in-ear monitors, that the guy at the board used his talkback mic into the in-ears monitors and said, hey, this guitar pack is not broadcasting or I'm not receiving from it, depending on the setup. I think that one, the pack, the receivers there on stage. And so anyway, he's like, I'm not getting anything from it. Now, they may have already thought that. I'm pretty sure that, but they got definitive, conclusive evidence that it's not just turned down. He's not getting signal at the board. And so he's able to communicate. Now, they can't communicate back in that setting, but the sound man can look at their body language and look at what they're doing and understand what's going on most of the time. And so having forms of communication, whether it's talkback mics, whether it's a Slack channel or text group, or the ability to look at the guy next to you and say, hey, this, but making sure that you have open lines of communication is really important when things go sideways, because it affects more than one person. If it's affecting someone on stage, you let them know you think you know what's going on. That allows them to not mess it up worse on stage by changing something drastic on the stage, which I've watched guys do, unplug things on stage and everything when it's not that problem. So you got to be careful, but you got to make sure you communicate and keep those lines open.
I think one of the things... Oh, please go ahead.
Sorry. I think communication is the only way that problems can be solved, because the minute we start to think we can solve a problem in isolation of somebody else is the minute we make things worse, because we start to think, oh, well, I know the answer to this. I don't need so-and-so to help me. The minute I have a problem with the stream, and I think Dave will probably talk about this example a few weeks ago, My first thought was panic, but it took me a second, and I go, okay, now let's take a step back. And Dave, having somebody else there who knows what they're doing and has run this for longer than you have, or even if they've run it for less time than you have, can provide a kind of a take a step back, realize what's going on, identify the source, solve the problem. So
Yeah, the problem that Cord was talking about, the way we have things set up in our booth and in our control room is we've got digital mixing boards, and the board that we have, Curtis, it's an Allen and Heath, right? Like an Avantis board.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it uses the Dante protocol to send the different channels and receive different channels digitally, and so it uses the network. When we were talking about our in-ear monitors and how you can have use the network cables, the what do they call them, the Cat 5 cables, Cat 6 cables,
yeah, Cat 5 Ethernet.
Yeah, using your Ethernet cables to send all that information digitally from one unit to the next. So the way we have it set up is everything that is going into our soundboard, every channel and every group is sent out digitally to the control room in the back. And we have a Mac Mini in there, and we're running, what are we running? Logic, Pro Tools? What are we
Logic
running?
Pro.
Logic, yeah. So we're running Logic on there, and we've got the Dante software, and it's bringing in a 1-to-1 of every channel that's on our soundboard. So that gives us the ability to mix and to do effects and to do different compression, different EQing and stuff specifically for our audio mix. Now, when when something is going wrong on the soundboard out there, sometimes it will affect us and other times it won't. So while they're trying to fix a feedback issue or something, we're not necessarily getting a feedback issue unless we have, say, the house mics, which we have mics that are pointed at our audience so that we can get the laughter, the applause, the the singing of the entire congregation. So if there's a feedback issue, while they're trying to fix that feedback issue, for us it may simply be turning down the choir mics and the mics that are on the for the audience.
And I think there are ways you can eliminate feedback in the context of, sorry.
No, go ahead. No, that's good.
One of the ways you can eliminate feedback, and this is something I found helpful, is adjusting your levels of your, especially with your house mics. Those are some of the things that cause most feedback. I found house mics, crowd mics, whatever wording you want to use, because you're picking up the reverberation from the speakers in the room. So one way I eliminate that is I EQ a lot out of that as much as possible to eliminate it. And the EQ aspect helps a ton with the feedback of the house mics. That was just a note I wanted to point out.
Yeah, that is one of the problems that we had, you and I, was, and thankfully it didn't affect anything going on in the room. It was only happening for the people on our stream. We have started seeing a glitch, and I think it's a power related thing. But we've started seeing a glitch where the best way I can explain it is like a brownout. Everybody knows what a brownout is. Like, when your air conditioner turns on, the lights dim, for a second, then they come back up. That's the only way I can really explain it, because something happens in Logic and the screen kind of flickers for just a second, and then the sync is off. So we end up, what I'm receiving when I'm seeing the mouths move and what I'm hearing are out of sync by a good second or two, not just a few frames, but a noticeable sync. And when that happened, Cord, like you said, you were like, what's going on? Something has happened. Nothing is working. And I noticed that the sound was off. And we had to close out of Logic and bring it back up. Now, one of the things that Corbin, the guy that really engineered our whole setup, when he first set it up, before he got the whole Dante thing working, is he had run a line from our media booth, from the house mixer, had run an analog line in there and fed it into my computer. And we used that for a couple of weeks while we were dialing in all the intricacies of the other thing. And then what ended up happening is we just left it there. and that is our backup. So we've built in a redundancy so that when something goes wrong, and Cord or Curtis or somebody who's engineering the live stream audio, when something goes wrong, it's simply, for me, it's a matter of muting the feed coming from the control room itself, and turning on the feed that's coming from the soundboard, and it's a blop blop, and everything's back to normal. And that gives the ability for us to troubleshoot the Mac Mini. We need to reboot it. Something has gone wrong. The faders are messed up and everything is off. Whatever the situation is,
reboot Logic. Yeah,
exactly. We can close Logic. We can boot it back up if it takes a long time because it's indexing plugins or whatever, and everything's just now running super slow. Doesn't matter. And for me, I have one more little piece of redundancy. I made sure that the primary camera that we have, the one that is manned, we've got a microphone on there that is picking up basically whatever's happening in the room. And I can turn that on. It's coming through the HDMI line. I'm able to turn that on or off if I need to. So if something's going on with the soundboard for the house, and if something is going on here in the back and things are just really messed up, worst case scenario, I turn the microphone on. Now, I may hear Lisa, lean over and whisper to somebody who's there. I may hear the people that are sitting right in front of her say, wow, that was a really good point the pastor just made. Or may hear them singing a little bit more than everyone else in the room, but it's okay because we're still hearing it, and the people on the live stream are still able to enjoy the experience or continue with the experience while we try to fix things. And some things can be fixed, like we said, right in the middle of everything that's going on. It may be a matter of just changing microphones. It may be a matter of muting somebody. If you got crackle and pop or something like that. And then sometimes it's just not going to get fixed. And for the rest of the time, it's going to be subpar. And, Curtis, we were talking about how we need to foster a culture of it's okay that things didn't go well. I think that's a crucial thing from the leadership. Now, you're in leadership at our church. Can you shed a little bit of light on that?
Yeah. Well, I think that there's this concept that we all have. Okay, we're all our worst critics, right? So there's a concept that we all face that says, we want what we do to be at the highest possible level. That's a great concept. That's exactly what we want to do. We want to give God our best. We have to realize our best is not perfection, and it's never going to be perfection, not until we see Him face to face. And we live in a fallen world with windows. That's all you need to know. There's windows in this world. Microsoft exists, so we live in a fallen world. As long as Microsoft exists, we're in a fallen world. Okay, and so you have this thing that it's just facts, man. It's just facts.
Yes,
it's gonna crash, I promise. And so anyway, but I mean, Apple's not perfect either. It's just way better. But anyway, so as you kind of look at this situation we're dealing with things that are imperfect, things that are going to mess up, things that aren't going to work right. And we're dealing with volunteers who aren't professionals, who don't work with this stuff every single day. I don't know if you ever watch any newscasts in today's world. I really don't most of the time because I'm not, 70. But like my parents watch newscasts, and if you grew up watching newscasts all the time, you probably do watch newscasts. And if you watch local news in a metropolitan area, you're going to find mistakes in every single newscast. Every single one is going to have errors in it, whether it's a camera cut wrong or an audio problem, somebody puts up the wrong key. There's a million things that can go wrong. We come back to commercial late. We're in the middle of a sentence. It happens in professional settings. So don't expect professional work or higher than professional work from your volunteers, okay? Have realistic expectations and realize that there's dilemmas on the stage that are created by the non-professionals on the stage that also impact what's happening in the room. Now, one thing I do want to emphasize before we finish up today is that when these problems arise, you don't just need to look at, can I fix it? Do I know how to fix it? Is it possible to fix it? But is it right to fix it? So let's say we're going through a worship set and the acoustic guitar battery goes dead. And we have to decide, wow, what do we need to do here? Do we try to communicate to them? Do we try to make this clear? Well, it kind of depends. You got a four song set and you're 3.5 songs in. No, just let it go. Just let it go. Communicate with them during the message. Let them change their battery out, something like that. Pastor gets up and he's preaching, and there's a problem with the microphone. Maybe it's dropping out. Maybe you're having some frequency drops. We live in the world of frequency drops. They're gonna happen because there's no longer protected frequencies for us in the professional audio world. So he's moving around, he's getting little dropouts. Okay, well, how bad is it? How many is it right where he always stands? Is he in his first sentence, or is he landing the plane with 3 minutes left in his message? Every problem, even though it's bad, even though it's distracting, doesn't mean it should be fixed. Right. Take words on a screen. Maybe there's a point up on the screen and there's a typo. Oh man, the typo, right? It's so annoying. Well, here's the question. Do we leave it up there and let everybody stare at the typo? Well, I guess it depends on how bad the typo is, right? If there's a comma in the wrong place, you're probably going to live with it. If there's a wrong word, you might be better off going back to your title slide, right? Or you may say, but I can go back to the title slide, then I can pull up that slide, I can correct that slide, and then I can put it back up. Great. Mm-hmm. Is he moving on to the next point in like 2 to 3 minutes? Don't do it. Just put up the title slide. Mm-hmm. It's okay. It's okay for it not to be right. And realize that there are times to correct problems and there's times to not correct problems. Sometimes by correcting a problem, we draw attention to it and we distract everybody in the room. And the purpose of our worship service is not great audio video production. The purpose of our worship service is to engage people in worship and for them to hear the word of God clearly and to understand it. And so nothing we want to do needs to detract from that, even if there's something not quite right going on. Sometimes you shouldn't fix it. And that's an important thing to know when things go wrong.
Yeah, I think that's something that we all need to be keeping in mind. Cord, do you have some final thoughts?
Mainly on back to what I said earlier that I pointed out that Curtis had brought to my attention recently is, as an audio engineer, we're meant to be invisible. And I know that's going to probably bristle some of you, but being an audio engineer is about producing a sound and experience for people where they don't know you were there. We went to a Brandon Lake concert about a year ago, and it wasn't until about a month after the concert I even realized that there had been an audio engineer up there running the whole concert. I had just thought it was the people on stage. And that just was ignorance on my part, but I think if we do our job correctly and we understand the point of why we're doing it and understanding when to make changes and when not to, we will become invisible. And I think the biggest part of us recognizing that and rolling into that is when our mixing and our audio engineering becomes something more than just a great sounding mix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. Being invisible means we're doing a good job. One of the things that we pray before every service is that we aren't a distraction by what we're doing, that we're not causing a distraction. We want the people, whether they're online or sitting there in the room, we want them to be in the best position to receive, what the Holy Spirit wants to say to them during that time, and how he wants to move in their heart. And we don't want to cause a distraction. We don't want the lights to cause a distraction. We don't want the hazer to cause a distraction. We don't want, a cameraman, to cause a distraction, or the popping from a bad chord. We had that with one of our countrymen, where we had to really tape that cord into position on the little transmitter pack, because if he's standing still, no big deal. If he makes a move like that, then all of a sudden it was popping and creaking and stuff. So we just don't want to be a distraction. By the way, everything that we've been talking about today is it's been focused on the presentation in the room and on the live stream. And if you are looking to get started with your live stream, if you haven't started one yet and you're wondering, okay, all this sounds like super, I don't even want to get into it because it's such a such a big thing. There's going to be a million problems and stuff. Don't let any of this scare you. You can get started with live streaming very easily, very quickly. You can add live streaming to your ministry as soon as you get off the call here with us, or the show with us. Just go to easylivestreaming.com. We've put together a free guide that talks about the 4 modes of live streaming and how you can add it to your ministry. The cool thing about the 4 modes of live streaming is, at some point, if you're doing everything well, you're going to be using a couple of these all the time. So just go grab it. It's a free download. It's a PDF. You can read through it. We've got some information in there on how you can get started, on some equipment if you're missing a few things, or if you're not sure what to get. We've got a little guide in there that can point you down the right path to getting started. You can get started very simply, and then you can grow it and increase it to, a full television style broadcast, which, is very doable, very doable. So don't let it scare you. Go to easylivestreaming.com and get started today. Guys, this has been really good. Cord. Wow. Yay.
That's
Cord.
a wrap.
Guys, thank y'all so much for joining us. Remember, everything that we do here is to help you leverage technology so that you can amplify the gospel and so that lives are changed. So we will see you next time. Thank y'all for watching. Okay, are we there? Okay. Y'all back?
Boom.
Boom, we're back. Okay, cool.
Yep.
All right.
Sweet.